One of the things that I think is the most obvious thing that just gets overlooked in our industry is that by our very nature and the nature of our work is we are problem solvers. Problem solvers. It doesn't matter if you're a buyer's agent, a listing agent, a team leader, if you're trying to recruit someone, if you're trying to manage an affiliate partner. At the end of the day, our goal is to identify a problem and create a solution and get buy-in from the person that we're dealing with so that we can have a go-forward strategy. Today is about leveraging the problem to get buy-in. So first, let's take a couple of steps backward and ask ourselves, what sort of problems are we solving for? What kind of a problem can I identify to create a solution for to get buy-in from my client or from my team leader or with whomever I'm trying to influence? And here's the very simple truth. There's a limited number of things that are going to happen in the industry in any problem, and the problems are very consistent over and over and over again. Now, it might seem like everyone's got this highly specialized problem, but at the end of the day, you're going to be able to develop very simple themes and common things that are markers in the conversations that you're having with buyers, in the conversations that you're having with sellers, in the conversation that you're having with other team members, or maybe you're in a recruiting conversation. What is the problem? Got it. Okay. So when you're dealing with a buyer, what's the problem? What's the problem? Well, the problem is they're looking for a property. Well, that's true. And why? Why are they looking for the property? Well, they're not satisfied with what they currently have, or they have aspiration. They aspire to have a different property. What is it about the property that they currently are in that is creating a problem for them that needs a solution? As a realtor, for gosh sakes, you're going to ask very specific questions to identify the problem. Now, here's the mystery inside the mystery. Well, we looked and looked and we can't find the right house. Can't find the right house. Well, the right house just isn't on the market. Okay. All right. Thanks for playing. Well, is the problem that they can't find the right house? Maybe, but many times, let me ask you this. If you had unlimited money, if you had unlimited resource, you think we could find the right house? Of course. So is the problem that the market's undersupplied and you can't find the right property? Or is the problem, that's existential threat, right? Or is the problem an internal issue, an internal threat is, and that is, as a buyer, I can't get my mind around the proposition that I'm poor or that I don't have enough money to get what I want. Now, how many of us in life are, suffer from that same internal talking point that says, well, if only this, then I could do that. If only this. So this might be a real objection, but it also might just not be a real objection. As a sales professional, where is the real problem? Is the real problem the reality of the market, or is the real problem this buyer's acceptance of the solutions that you might be putting on the table? And so where do you start with this? Well, it's really simple. You have to probe a little bit deeper. You have to identify the real problem. What is the problem? 90% of the time, someone's initiating a move because of an issue that they're not happy with. They're not aspirational, but yet they're reactive, not always, but many times. So you need to drill in. Okay, Mr. Home Buyer, what is it about your current situation that's become intolerable? Okay, what is it about your current living situation that has to change in order for you to be satisfied? Tell me a little bit about your current situation and why it needs to change, right? As an interrogator, what I want you to do is drill deeper. I need you to get to that place where there's real disclosure when you're dealing with your client, buyer, seller, it doesn't matter who it is. What is the underlying cause for this motivation? And the only way you're going to get there is if you've built enough trust and credibility in the fact that you can provide solutions. In fact, I want you to probably even say that to who you're talking to. Mr. Buyer, Miss Buyer, I am 100% confident that I can craft out a solution that's going to fix your problem. However, what I need you to do is I need you to trust me enough to really tell me, like, what's the real problem here? Is it Is it affordability? Are you just afraid of the $7,000 house payment? What is it? What's at the core? Let's address this first, because I know that I can craft out a solution if I just have a very clear idea of what your problem is. On the sell side, the sellers are a little bit more complicated, and I don't mean difficult. When I say complicated or complex, that means there's more potential moving parts. There's more potential moving parts is almost by definition the meaning of complicated. Not necessarily more difficult, but more complicated, and here's why. When you're dealing with a seller or taking a listing, you're going to have to understand why this person is going to actually sign a contract with you. What's the compelling reason for them to sell their property? Now, there's more moving parts in that there's a much higher likelihood that this person might be selling for aspirational reasons, and that is they want to find a replacement property that exceeds what they currently have. Find a replacement property that exceeds what they currently have. And that's a much higher percentage of client that you're going to be dealing with that's aspirational as a seller. Now, there's also sellers that are selling for crisis, and this happens all the time. Maybe a life situation's forcing the sale of the property, and that's always complicated. And then in addition to that, you have to drill into if they wanted to keep the home as a potential rental property, and you need to cover this in your listing presentation so you don't get any surprises. What are they afraid of? Are they afraid of being a landlord? Have they ever been a landlord before? If they kept the property and turned it into an investment property, is that part of their long-term strategy for wealth accumulation? Well, you better understand that before you start taking a listing contract. If their plan B is they're going to hold the property and turn it into a rental property, and selling the property might not actually fix their problem. It actually might reduce their long-term success or reduce their long-term goals. This is why when you're dealing with a seller, when you're dealing with a listing, it's super important to drill into this question, and that is, Mr. Seller, Mrs. Seller, when you think about selling your home and at the end of the sale, you're going to have the proceeds of the sale of this house, what is it that you must do with that money? Like, what is the non-negotiable number one thing you have to do when you get that proceeds check? Okay. And this is really spelling it out very simply because, sure, maybe in 80% of the cases, this has to do with finding a replacement property. But that's not always the case. Maybe they're going to take this money and they want to find a replacement property and they're scaling down and they want to be closer to the grandkids. Or maybe they're going to take some of this money and they're going to give it to a friend or a family member who's having a financial crisis. And if you don't really understand what their true problem is, that when it comes for time for you to craft out the solution and leverage the solution, you're going to be at a huge disadvantage. Leveraging the solution is about taking the terminal reason for the transaction and balancing that against somebody's core inactivity or lack of taking responsible action. So let me repeat that and simplify it. Leveraging the problem is about having the problem on one side and then having non-action on the other side, and which is going to ultimately win in this contest. Because if you don't leverage a solution and identify the solution and balance it against someone's inability to take steps forward, there's no movement. And if there's no movement, my gosh, there's no paycheck. The number one thing that you do to get paid as a real estate professional is you facilitate movement. Literally move from here to there. If there's no movement physically, there's no movement of money, and there is no commission. So I'm not proposing that you be ugly or super aggressive, but you really have to ask your client, when it comes to this current situation that's intolerable, is it so intolerable that it's going to cause you to take action? Or can you tolerate it a little bit longer? Can you procrastinate on this decision? And if you procrastinate on this decision, where does that put us in the timeline for moving forward with a solution, right? Don't gloss over this, particularly with your seller. It's important with your buyer, but it's particularly important with your seller. Why? because there's more complexity. If I'm finding a replacement property, that has a lot to do with timeline. It has a lot to do with succession plan. If I can't craft out a succession plan in your moving schedule, you're not going to list your property with me. And of course, in a low inventory market, this is a big problem. Crafting the solution. If I know that somebody wants to move into a certain neighborhood, my gosh, I'm going to go door knock that neighborhood and I'm going to secure an appointment with a listing appointment with that person before I take the listing appointment or before I take the listing contract with somebody else whose core need is to move into that location. Why? I'm leveraging the problem by crafting a solution and identifying a clear course of action going forward. It's complex because there's more moving parts, but I'm telling you, the more moving parts you have, the more opportunity you have to facilitate a solution and go forward. Okay, lastly, let's talk about my favorite problem. You got a problem? I got a favorite problem. My favorite problem. If you're a team leader, broker, owner, if you're out there trying to either help recruit real estate professionals or you're helping real estate professionals grow their businesses, guess what? It's all about problems. It's all about a problem and identifying a problem. If your core value proposition when you go to the market and you want to be attractive to other agents, or maybe you're self-managing, and this is a conversation you need to have with yourself in the head, and that is, what are the core reasons that I'm not more successful today as a real estate professional? And so it's a very powerful questioning, line of questioning that you have to get into with your agents and the agents that you hope to recruit. Because it's complexity on complexity. Not only are you helping run your business, you're helping this person run their business. You're helping facilitate best practices so that this person can actually become more successful. So let me ask you a really loaded question. If you're helping an agent and you turn to them and say, so how can I help you? How can I help you grow your business? And that person says, well, you know, the market sucks. Market sucks. I'm like, oh, okay, the market sucks. So I can't do anything about that. But how can I help you grow your business? How can I help you grow your business? And they say, well, I worked with this person on last Tuesday, and they didn't want to buy, and I had a listing appointment a couple of weeks ago, and so you get all these fragmented answers. At the core, what is the problem? Is it this problem is this person having difficulty prioritizing their calendar correctly? Does this person understand what they have to do in order to be successful? And are they being reminded of it and being coached in that direction? This is a really delicate process because when people are running their own business, first off, they're self-employed, so they do not have to listen to you. And that's fine. However, if you can encourage them to listen to you, what is it that you need to identify in their world? I would submit for your consideration, it boils down to a couple of simple things, and that is process, system, and method around prospecting and transaction management, marketing, and a couple of other disciplines. As a leader, you need to identify where is the deficiency in this agent or in this agent that you're trying to recruit. Because if you're successful in your own business, you should be able to demonstrate success to the person with whom you're trying to recruit or the agent that you're trying to enhance their business. And you can show them examples. You know what, Bill, Jim, I had a similar situation when I was starting out or in my fifth year of business. I was doing fine, but I wasn't growing, and I hit a barrier. And I see some of the things that you're doing now remind me of something that I also have gone through. So now it's a direct testimonial. Then what are you going to do? You're going to demonstrate or show them, here's how I got over that problem, and here's how I was able to craft out a solution, and here's how I went forward. Now here's the rub. You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink, right? So just like you can't force a buyer to buy and you cannot force a seller to sell, you can't force a real estate professional to do the things that they need to do to be more successful in their business because they're self-governing and self-managing. And so what happens here is is you need to find who are those agents that you're prospecting and who are those agents in your organization that have a growth mindset or a proactive mindset. Now, what you're going to find is the agents that you're dealing with kind of go in arcs and ebb and flow, and this probably is something that happens with you also. There's going to be certain times in your thinking when you're very, very open to growing your business and being very strategic about that and growing what you're doing. There's going to be other times when you're so overwhelmed with what you're currently is on your plate that you can't really think in terms of strategic organization and strategic growth. There's going to be other times when you're depressed and you just don't want to get out of bed. So if you're a leader in this business and you're trying to help other agents by leveraging their problem, you're at a huge advantage in some ways because you probably have already been there and you've already done that. You've already faced some of the things they're trying to face. And the power of your testimony is that, you know what, I think I understand where you are. This is where I was at this time. What I recommend wholeheartedly as a leader is that you compartmentalize the problems that your agents or the agents you're recruiting, compartmentalize their problems. Because what you're going to find is that they all have 3 problems. That's it. They only got 3 problems. They're either overburdened with paperwork and transaction management and they're not prospecting, or they're not prospecting, or they haven't developed system and method and process to really create prospecting methodologies that, I don't want to say run themselves, but they become very consistent. At the core of almost every problem out there is really simple. I just don't have enough people to talk to, or the people with whom I'm speaking with are not ready, able, and willing at this time, so I need to put them in a sequence. It doesn't seem like a very heavy burden, but when you're trying to run a business and you're trying to think about marketing, you're trying to think about all these other things that you should be doing, your individual agents can get overwhelmed. As a leader, help these agents compartmentalize what they have to do, identify small problems, and then leverage solutions that you've created in your own past and demonstrate those for the agents that you're helping or for the agents that you're trying to recruit. Okay, so the one thing I probably didn't really address is the elephant in the room, and that is the market. Is the market the problem? Is the market the problem? And here's why I don't really focus on market conditions when we talk about leveraging the problem. Although you can, right? Because within inside of every market, there's some talking points that you could leverage about the market. And so, for example, you say, well, interest rates, are high or interest rates are low, and there's different arguments around that. Well, when the interest rates are high, then the thing is there's fewer buyers in the market, and so you're going to have a better selection. Very, very incredibly logical. That logic might work in some of the arguments that you might make. It might not. But what I really talk about leveraging the problem is getting into someone's individual psyche. I'm not talking about the external factors of supply and demand for property and supply and demand for money. I want you to leverage what's happening internally in the person with whom you are interacting. And I can't tell you, this is a huge shift in mindset for a lot of people who are product-centric or who are process-centric. What I want you to do is probe deeper into an individual psyche so that you can really relate much better when it comes time for you to leverage out a solution for the problem that they're having. All right. I put a lot on your dinner plate today. So as always, my promise to you is if you have any questions about anything that has to do with this video, I would encourage you to just go grab 15 minutes and get on my calendar. I would love to meet you and learn a little bit about what's going on in your business and how I might be able to help.